Thank you very much. Indeed, we're going to continue again a little bit more on Android following the next talk. So, Android BianLian means face changing, I think, if I'm correct. It's banking trojan for Android, which means that it's after your banking credentials, of course, okay? And it was discovered in 2018. We'll go back to the date a little bit afterwards. And it is inspired mainly from BankBot and also Anubis. But it's not exactly from the same lineage. The well-known lineage that we have is BankBot, Anubis, Cerberus, and AndroidBianLian. And BianLian is from another part, like, I don't know, cousin or something like that. Some of its specificities is that, well, it's really, let's say, smartly coded. We'll discuss this, of course, afterwards again. So I said I wanted to say a little bit more about the date, 2018. In terms of Androids, that's like nearly prehistoric. It's really a long time ago. 4 years really counts in terms of Android. So why are we talking about something which was out in 2018? The first reason is this curve. Well, it's particularly active since the beginning of this year, 2022, actually even more than what it was originally in 2018. Okay, so this is the first reason. The other reason is really actually because of its age. It is abnormally old, okay? If we go back to the previous slide, you'll notice, for instance, that BankBot lived a long life of 2 years. Anubis, 1 year, Cerberus, 1 year, and most of the time, those Android botnets, they live 1 or 2 years at most. This one is already 4 years old, and it's still like, just up and very, very active. So this is another point we're going to develop in the presentation and understand why. So you've seen lots of slides, so you're going to have a little bit of a movie part there. I'm going to show you first the malware in action so that you can see what it is doing. It will be better than slides. I'm going to put that, and it goes a little bit too fast. I'll go back here. So this is an Android phone, okay? The malware is actually installed here on the video player, which is here. This is just an example. It could have been installed on another application, but most of the time it is installed on a well-known application, okay? As soon as you launch the video player, it asks you to activate accessibility services. Now, in this audience, I'm sure that you would know that this is strange and probably you wouldn't click. You've got to think again that this is for end users. And end users, I think that the term accessibility services, although it is actually for accessibility, it might be a little bit misleading. For instance, could it be for a video player for remote control of the video player? An end user might be a little bit disturbed by this fact. Or is it to show subtitles, for instance, and get the speech and turn that into subtitles? So there are plenty of reasons why this might not be totally clear to the end user. So here in this video, of course, we'll play dumb and we'll click everywhere so that it works, okay? You get another pop-up, and this one is really kind of getting a little bit more alarming. But once again, let's say that we're kind of the random end user, and we click yes and OK to everything. So there it's installing. You've got a few pop-ups, and that's not exactly normal, but it's how it behaves. And then you see actually that the video player application has disappeared. So there, probably the end user will think, oh, it crashed, something is not working correctly. Actually, the malware is running in background. And it is listening for any mobile bank application. And when it will see one, it will do stuff there. And here, as an example, on this Android smartphone, we installed an application of PTT Bank, which is a Turkish bank. It is, again, just an example. There are over 500 banks which are targeted. I just had to choose one. I couldn't put 500, right? And we'll continue. They're starting the application, and this is the login page for the bank. Now, see, if you have already seen, heard about overlays, well, this is exactly what is happening. You've got the mobile application of the bank, which is official, and it's asking for a login page. But the malware, so that the banking application was run, and it says, I'm going to put on top of that an overlay, a window, with exactly the same things. It just looks alike. That this is exactly what the end user sees, and it's going to ask the credentials. And the end user is going to enter username and password on the top window, which is actually going to the malware, and not underneath to the real official application. So that's, some of you, I guess, have already seen that. It's pretty common, but it's to be sure that you've seen it once working, because it's pretty amazing. So yeah, key points. It has been out for really a long time. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that the banking app, the mobile app of the bank, is particularly fine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. The malware is usually in another app somewhere on the system. So now, how does it sell underground? How do the threat actors actually sell this botnet to their customers? So you've got, of course, the malware authors, and in the case of BianLian, we think that there is only one malware author, possibly two, but a very restricted group. Malware authors usually don't sell directly to end users, well, cyber criminals in the end. They usually resort to sales team, like in a real company, to do the sales part, okay? Same, we think that it is only like between 1 and 10 resellers there, but not a huge group. And again, the customers which are going to buy and rent the botnet, well, it's not like in other botnets where you have thousands of people buying the botnet. Here, it's always between 3 and 30. Well, it's a big range, okay, but it's not that much. It's well below the hundreds there. And they install that on the various command and control centers to grab the money and grab the credentials. As for money, well, the affiliates, it's the usual scheme. They are renting the botnet, and they pay the sales team, and in the end, the malware author gets a little bit of money in. Okay. Now, how does this get advertised so that the affiliates rent the botnet? Well, of course, you've got hacking forums, very much instant messaging, and also, actually, just simply videos on YouTube. So I'm going to show you one video. It's pretty amazing to see that on YouTube. This one is an Android botnet from May 2022. As far as I know, I haven't seen samples in the wild yet. But you see, it advertises just like, you know, a company would advertise a real product, and then they're showing this or that feature of the C2 panel to show off what it can do. I'm going to cut that because, well, we only have 30 minutes, but you have the link, or you can just Google it and you'll find the video on YouTube. Yep, there we go. So I actually had lots of issues finding references to BianLian underground. Why? Well, The main reason is, of course, that it's not named BianLian Underground. That's the name that we antivirus vendors gave it, but the real name Underground is Hydra. Then there's another issue. Hydra is a password cracker and a famous one. So whenever we are searching for that underground or on Google or any search engine, well, most of the time we end up with references to the password cracker and not to the botnet. So that was kind of a little bit annoying, but it's the way it is. A prior researcher managed to get access to one of the panels of Hydra, and we see a screenshot there of what he saw. So a nice thing, you see that here there's the reference to the name Hydra panel, and then probably it might be a little bit small for you, but those are the various other features that the botnet can do. And unfortunately for us in terms of searching things, well, there's no remarkable words again, so it's going to be difficult to search for it on internet based on those on the panel. So after seeing lots of advertisement to rent, for instance, Anubis. Anubis is supposed to be dead, but I don't know. I see it everywhere underground, okay? Anubis, Cerberus, and everything. I thought, well, maybe actually those people are advertising, I don't know, Cerberus, but the name is wrong, and maybe this is actually BianLian. Well, no. We checked with what was being advertised, the features, and the features do not match the ones of BianLian. One of the best thing to check is that BianLian, for instance, is using a remote control application, which is known as TeamViewer, okay? It's an official one, it's absolutely legitimate, and it uses that to remote control the infected phone. Whereas the other botnets, most of them except Alien, all the others are using a custom protocol, VNC, well, named VNC, but it's not the VNC tool that you might know, which is doing the remote control thing. So because of that, we know that when we see an advertisement underground, if it is really likely to be Hydra or not. We managed finally to see a threat actor who was selling Hydra on Telegram. This threat actor has been known to sell many different Android botnets and has actually now shifted since 1 year more to Android spyware. Okay? And we saw in hacking forums another guy who was selling a private Android botnet. He didn't name it, but this really could be Hydra because, well, it's private, which would explain why we don't have that many C2s all the time. It's saying explicitly that it's selling it with limited slots, which is also something which matches BianLian. No VNC, as I told you. It's BianLian is using TeamViewer, so it looks like that as well. And it insists that it's not Emotet or Anubis. So this one could be BianLian indeed. So the thing to remember there is that BianLian is keeping a low profile underground, which might seem a little bit strange because if they want to make the most money, maybe they might want to spread more. But when you think that this malware has been out for more than the others, maybe actually it is the way to live longer, kind of. So I also developed a simple script to test and to find C2s which are available at any moment. Basically, given on a few features, I know that this or that IP is likely to be a C2 of BianLian. And I sent a command to it asking it for the list of targeted applications, using BianLian's protocol. And if it answers to that, well, it means it knows BianLian's protocol, so it is indeed a C2 of that botnet. And then, well, if we don't know about it, we can add it to our list. So I'm going to demo that. It's a live demo, so anything can happen. So there we go. So that's a little bit, yeah, so it fits the screen. So whenever you see new, it means that it's a new C2, which is, new means like I scanned on Friday, so it has been up since, it's new since last Friday. And up means that it is operational, but I have already seen it last Friday. And there, so what you see, we'll let it go, is that, well, which countries it is targeting most, and the number of apps. And you see, for instance, that some of them are targeting only very few apps and few countries, Turkey, Germany, Israel, and the Netherlands, while some other C2s are targeting, like, this one, for instance, 520 apps. It's basically targeting everything it can everywhere, okay? So this pretty much depends on what we get. So we'll see what we get in the end. Yeah, this one also only 15 apps, banks mostly, in Austria and Germany. And I think all the rest will be just down. So the ones which are down can be false positives also, because maybe they no longer are really actually BianLian C2s. So yeah, we had 22 up and 22 down and 5 new. Okay. Pretty high score today. I'm happy with that. Well, I shouldn't be, of course, but so that's what I said. And yeah, just wanted to highlight that probably it is the C2s are run by different threat actors because they are targeting different countries and a different number of of apps in those countries. So it looks likely that it's probably different threat actors in the end. You won't be surprised too much to know that they are using internet service providers, which are very often high fraud risk, and that they prefer those where they can purchase and pay using cryptocurrencies. But it's not always the case, okay? Sometimes it's also very low profile and low risk ISPs. On the smartphone is not directly referencing the C2. It uses an intermediate URL, and that intermediate URL is then serving a domain name which resolves to the IP address. So this is what we have in the end. And for each point in that change, we have, well, it's maintained, okay? So, for instance, the C2, I see that most of the time they live approximately 1 month, sometimes 2, but not really more. The domain names, that's something that really is constantly changing. Every 2 days, you've got a new domain name, okay? And then the intermediate one, the one which is serving the domain names, this one really stays out pretty long, actually, between 2 and 6 months. As for the targeted applications, this also is being maintained very much, and it is, well, it's gaining more and more apps. For instance, well, since the beginning of 2022, well, I'm based in France. I know that it started targeting French banks in May only, okay? There are some new Spanish banks which are targeted, so we see those in here, and that was just last week. And then for the people who are local here, well, you've got also some Czech banks which are targeted, of course. The profile of targeted applications, well, mostly banking applications, 80%. So we have roughly 600 applications which are targeted, 80% of that are banks. Then in the 20 remaining percent, 10 are still very much related to banks. It's cryptocurrency wallets and finance applications. And then the remaining 10% are usually mail applications, security application, or second factor authentication applications, especially those which are used by banks. So yeah, key points. We usually have approximately 20 C2s which are operational all the time. Today it was 22. Okay, depends. Those C2s are maintained. It's just not like, they are up and people seem to forget about it. No, we see changes sometimes even in the campaigns that they are serving. Because they are targeting different banks, probably it means that they are operated by different threat actors. Now we'll dig a little bit more into the code. I've been reversing a lot of botnets, well, Android malware now. And this one is really special in the way it is coded, because we see very regularly when we look into malware samples, high-tech, well, kind of nice tricks of how to do this or that in the code. This occurs pretty often, and it's interesting for us as researchers to see how they're doing it. But here it's different. We see that the person who's coding this really is skilled in terms of development, knows how to architecture code, knows how to make modules, how to make sure that it will be extendable, and things like that. For instance, nearly all the code that was out in 2018 is still used now in 2022. And what they've mainly done is you've got plugins to add new features. And they did it so well that they are still using their plugin API to add a plugin and add this or that feature. So this is really well done. Then you'll have more details, of course, in the paper. But basically, in terms of implementation, it is well implemented. For instance, I don't know, sometimes they want to disable Play Protect. Well, what they do is they pop up the window where you can configure that, and then they use the Accessibility Service API, and they are basically clicking to disable it automatically without the user doing it. Honestly, there's no best way to do that. It's just perfect, okay? For now, this is the best possible implementation, and if we look at many of the things they are implementing, it is really well done. Of course, there's a little bit room of improvement. For instance, the dose mode about battery optimizations. Well, in another botnet, which is named FluBot, well, they are doing it slightly better. So yeah, they have a little bit of work to do yet, fortunately. So then what I wanted to do is, of course, when you're doing some research on it, you often want to interact with the server, but I don't want to keep on sending data to the real C2s. So I created and implemented a fake C2, and you've got the code. You can grab it and use it if you wish. It's you can customize it to do what you want, and I'm going to show you again how this is working. So yeah, on the left-hand side, you've got the fake C2. It's a Flask application, and on the other side, you've got my emulator, which is infected with BianLian. And as soon as you start the application, well, you see communication coming in to your fake CQ, and as it's fake, well, you can print out everything which is happening and see what are the messages. So this is really good. Then I tell it, okay, now you're going to monitor this or that bank, and this is what it does, and I'm going to speed a little bit so that we don't waste too much time. I'm going to ask my server to send screenshots all the time. So it will take screenshots of the Android emulator every second and send that back to the C2. And that's what it's doing. We see the images which are piling up on the fake service side. And then we can even have a look at the, it's a little bit later, yeah, over here. So here, this is the emulator, and this is the images that we got on the fake service side. And you can see I'm scanning through all the images. You can even see the different the letters that the user is entering on the mobile phone. So that's another way to grab credentials, of course. Okay, so this is just helpful for malware analysts to understand how the features are working. And let's speed up. There are a few surprises, and one of the surprises there is that we'd expect, for instance, the packing of the malware to be more and more difficult. So it would be like, the line going steadily up that way. And it's not the case. Quite strangely, the first few samples of 2018 and 2019 were far more difficult to unpack than what we have now. Same thing that we noticed for the obfuscation. Other thing which is a little bit strange is that I told you that there's an intermediate website. Well, that's actually most of the time a private GIST URL, and it's serving so the domain name for the C2. And then suddenly in September 2021, we had the first sample where it was actually serving, well, the intermediate website was an onion URL. So I thought, oh, well, okay, this is something new, interesting. Probably they're going to use that now on for the rest of what is going on, the new samples. Well, not at all. They kept on, most of the time using both techniques, the old one and sometimes the new one, the onion URL. Although probably the new one was probably more difficult to catch. I don't know exactly why. And even worse than that, last week I grabbed a sample, and this one was doing a direct reference to the C2. So they were losing all the benefit of using an intermediate website, and they decided, okay, we'll just directly reference to the C2, so whenever the C2 is down, well, their malware is no longer working. Okay, that's a decision which is, from my point of view, very strange. Okay. Probably their reason for doing this is that it looks like, the malware author is not really after things which are high-tech all the time, but wants to use only simple things that are proved to run and to work well. And maybe this is the key to why it is resilient and why it has been out since 2018, actually, okay? So maybe that's something interesting for us to keep in mind. Now, one of the last slides there, of course, is something that I'd love to discuss with some of you offline afterwards, is if you have ideas how to stop this, because it's pretty difficult. We can't sinkhole the C2s, or I haven't found any ideas how to do that. Of course, they are located everywhere worldwide, so, well, by the time I ask one of the ISPs, oh, you're hosting a malware, and if I'm lucky, I get an answer. Of course, they have moved off to another location a long time ago. So this is kind of a little bit difficult. We are asking as much as possible banks to file complaints, because if we have lots of complaints, then we will have local authorities which will get interested into that and want to do something and to stop things. But we've got to stop a botnet which has been working for 4 years. I mean, we can't just leave it out like that. Okay. And that's about it. I would just like to thank two colleagues of mine, Bumit Mali and Amir Lakhani, who helped me very much to conduct this research. And thank you for your attention. I don't know if we've got time.
So I think we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. Does anybody have a question? There's one kind of in the middle back. Wait for the microphone, please.
Hello. I was wondering if mobile antivirus applications can detect this kind of overlay attacks. And my second question, if I may, was what can people do to defend themselves against this kind of attacks?
Okay, so for the first part of the question, is it if I understood well, is it detected and caught by mobile antivirus? Says yes, it is. It is detected. All the samples are detected pretty easily. Well, by Fortinet, but all the other vendors actually, because we have the samples. Okay, it's not that much the issue. The issue is rather that we'd like to no longer have any samples and to stop it all altogether, right? But from a detection point of view, this is working well. We have all the elements to detect new samples really quickly. Then I forgot the second part of the question. Oh yeah, for the end users. Well, for the end users, I think it will be a generic answer. As you saw at the beginning in the first video, when they are asked to activate accessibility services, well, we need obviously to educate them on this and to explain that this is for people with disabilities, if that they're going to enable it when this is the case, but not for a video player, not for a Flash player, not for, I don't know, a fake Google Play application. I think that will be the key to solving BianLian and many other cases, because all the malware that we see recently are nearly for Android are using this this feature. You're welcome.
Any other questions? There's one over there. Wait for the mic.
For the C2 servers, is that through reversing the malware? Is that how we found them? Or are you just scanning for C2 servers on the internet? Or how does that work?
Okay, so, well, I'll go back to this slide, this one, okay? When we reverse the sample, we get this URL, okay, inside the code. So this one, then we can just do a wget, or, well, we can just ping it, well, not ping it, call this URL, and we get this response, which is actually, it's base 64 encoded, but base 64 decoding is really not difficult. You decode that, and you get this one, this URL. And then you see that it resolves to an IP address. So that's one way to get the IP addresses there. Then to proactively get all the IP addresses in my script, where was that? Here. It's a little bit different. We've noticed a few particular things on the C2 panels. I'd rather not say aloud what now, okay? But we can speak about it, which help us notice if this is really very likely to be a C2 of BianLian or not. And so we do a search on that on trojan, to be honest, and it gives us a number of IP addresses, and then we test. I send a specific message to that host to see if it's still responding and if it understands BianLian's communication protocol. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Any further questions? There's one over there.
Did you notice any pattern in the group, especially the group that has a high number of targets? Because the groups that, well, in the samples that I unpacked, the groups that were targeting Turkey, for example, they had very specific web views for it. But for example, the ones that are targeting a large list of banks, they sometimes don't have web views for the countries they are targeting. So did you notice any pattern on who they are really targeting these specific groups?
For the one which are targeting like really numerous applications, like over 300, I've put the countries, but no, it seems like it's just large. My opinion is that probably on the C2 panel, you know, it very often happens in other botnets. You've got kind of a list of application that you can target, and the affiliates just clicked like everything they found in this or that region, okay? But I couldn't make any specificity out of that, either from like, you know, the perspective of the domain in where, because it's always banks. That's about it. But indeed, in the limited ones, then those, for instance, this one is only targeting Austria and Germany and no other country, no other banks. In this, I can't see it any longer. No, I guess it is this one. This one is targeting Spain, Colombia, and Germany, but if I remember well, it's mostly Spain. And I don't know if it's an error that they are targeting a few other banks or in there, but it looks like, I don't know, 30 Spanish banks and the rest there. And that's about it. The ones with Turkish banks are usually from older samples that we saw, and indeed it's very specific, targeting a few countries.
I think we've pretty much come up to our time at this point, unless there's some really, really desperate question there somewhere. Is there? No? Okay, then let's
I'll be
thank...
here anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Let's thank Axelle for this amazing presentation.